Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jody Zarambi. Some of you might know me by my pen name, Jazzy Mitchell. I was the moderator last year for these live events, and I am thrilled to be continuing in that role. I want to give you some information as to why these live streams are now a combined effort between Desert Palm Press and Launchpoint Press. As of last month, I took over as the publisher for Launchpoint Press. Since I've had half a dozen works published through Desert Palm Press, I am loyal to the publishing house and want to continue participating in Desert Palm Press events as I help Launchpoint Press grow. To that end, we are now sister presses, and we work together to promote, support, and assist each other and all the authors attached to both publishing houses. That brings us to our main event. Today, I am excited to spend time with two accomplished writers, Laury A. Egan and Reba Birmingham. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Both will read an excerpt from one of their projects, and after the readings, we will spend some time getting to know each other. If you're watching this live, feel free to submit the questions and comments you have on the page where you're watching it. Laury, before you read for us today, tell us about the story and set up the scene.
Okay, well, the book is Double Crossed, and I think I should ask a question. Ever dream of finding the perfect lover? When Alexandra Wyatt meets Marnie Hardwick, Alex is thrilled to end her solitary, unhappy existence. After several blissful months, the two women buy a house set deep in a dense pine forest. However, the landscape soon dissolves from idyllic to disturbing as Alex begins to suspect the relationship is a trap. Fueled by jealousy, anger, and curiosity, Alex rushes into a bizarre intersection of past and present that holds treacherous consequences. Double Crossed is a tale of desire, deception, betrayal, and smoldering revenge that sparks a complex plot to achieve retribution. At once a strange love story,
I think I should ask a question.
And a cascading nightmare, written in the tradition of Patricia Highsmith, the novel engages the reader in a web of danger and psychological intrigue. And readers, pay attention to the title. There's a lot of tricky double crossing in this book. I'd like to read a little bit from chapter 1, which has been amended slightly to fit. Okay. Marnie met in the dark heart of February. Despite my emotional reticence, I was instantly bewitched by the sexy, funny, bright woman with fiery red hair and flashing green eyes. I believed luck had finally kissed me on the forehead. Everything about us seemed fated, as if we were floating down a river to happiness. Our first date was hot, so passionate that the night migrated into a weekend. We talked about our careers, our many shared interests, and the years spent alone, searching for the perfect woman. I tried logical, careful, and prudent. Oh boy, when I was smitten, besotted, infatuated, and hopelessly in love. Before I knew it, Marnie was spending more time at my tiny apartment than hers, neither of which was sufficiently large for two people. Then she began joking about buying a house. Today, a sunny Saturday in April, Marnie poured coffee into 2 travel mugs and suggested we go for a drive in her convertible with the top down, though the air was still cool. "That's what the coffee is for, dear," she told me, "to keep us warm." She accompanied this comment with a sultry glance that implied she would do this better than the coffee. We wandered through curving country roads that were strangers to the orderly concept of north, south, east, west. Within no time at all, I was lost. But Marnie seemed to know this area of New Jersey, an area I regarded as a backwater, populated by horses and farms, and deficient in theaters, bookstores, galleries, and concert halls. In other words, the necessities. After an hour of meandering and laughing at my directional confusion, we rounded a bend in the road and saw a for sale sign in front of a house encircled by acres of dense pines. Marnie slowed the car and turned into the long driveway. "Oh, Alexandra," she cried, "look at this place." The two-story house was a hodgepodge, predominantly Tudor in style, with a stout turret at left. "It's unusual," I replied, examining the gray and brown stone facade frizzed with ivy. "Unusual? It's wonderful." Marnie switched off the ignition, rushed from the car, and walked toward the house as if she were already its proprietor. Although I was worried about trespassing, I followed her down a path and around the back where we discovered an expansive deck hemmed in by the thick forest. Marnie turned to me, her green eyes bright with excitement. "Oh, isn't this romantic? Let's call the realtor." "What?" I shook my head. "I don't know." She grabbed my arm and tugged like a small child. "Oh, come on, it won't hurt to see the house." She gave me the sweetest smile and irresistible confection. "We've been talking about living together." My reservations were my usual ones, sandblasted by a life of solitude and years of listening to my mother pontificating on the merits of financial separation and privacy. And there was the worrisome fact that Marnie and I had known each other only 9 weeks, although the time together had been absolute bliss without one cross word spoken. In all my 33 years, I'd never felt this way about a woman before, though I'd had several intense affairs. I asked myself, what was the worst thing that could happen if Marnie and I bought a house and our relationship failed? With a legal agreement to protect our separate investments, the most I could lose was a few $1,000s, which I could afford. At least I would have attempted commitment, something I'd never had the courage to do. "Are you sure?" I asked. "It isn't too far from your work?" "Just a different direction." Marnie grinned at me and removed her cell phone to call the realtor. 15 minutes later, the woman arrived. "Hi, I'm Alex Wyatt." I shook the agent's hand. "And this is Marnie Hardwick." The realtor looked at me and then at Marnie, as if trying to ascertain who was the potential buyer or whether we were a couple. "Nice to meet you both," she said, unlocking the front door. We made an offer, less than the asking price. My 1% check was accepted. Closing was set for the last week in June. After the mortgage was approved, I cooked dinner for Marnie. "I hope it's okay about the $5,000 I've contributed toward the deposit," she said, her reddish brown eyebrows knitted together. "Our partnership should be equal, and yet you've paid $25,000 already and plan to spend more at closing. Truly, it's not what I want." I pulled her close and smelled the opium perfume she wore behind her ear, down her neck and along the plunge of her breasts. "I'm sure my savings are safe," I replied. "When you're able, you can make up the difference." I was hardly paying attention to the conversation, intent as I was on unbuttoning her blouse. Marnie shivered. "You are such a devil, Alex, and here we are talking business and all." She squirmed in my arms, but raised her lips to mine. "That's the beginning."
Okay, thank you, Laurie. I really enjoyed the beginning of that story because it seems idyllic in many ways, that it's the perfect relationship, the perfect romance. But there's a little bit in there that hints at maybe not as all well, as far as Alex having some misgivings of purchasing a home that that Marnie brings her to, and they're not really having a large conversation with it. They're just pushing forward to do it. So very interesting setup. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure. My pleasure.
Yes, and our pleasure, actually. Reba, before you read for us today, tell us about the story and set up the scene. Hold on one second. Ellen, can you bring her forward again? All right, try again, Reba.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, great. Thank you.
All right, it's a series, and the first one is Floodlight, although they do stand alone. The second is Words on a Plate. I'm reading today from the third book, the blue one, The Wolf You Feed. And all of the books take on a pretty big topic, the balance of good and evil, because lesbians have other things to do, I think, besides just falling in love. My protagonists are a little bit older, they're married, and they get drawn into an adventure with another world. So in this scene, we cut to that parallel world because quite a bit of the book is spent in California. They live in a little town called Maryville, and it's kind of a suburb somewhere of Los Angeles. But they end up going to other countries quite a bit in these books. So in this scene, we cut to that parallel world of the Hercynian forest in Germany. And Aaron Hart, who is Mitzi's father, it's Panda and Mitzi Fowler, the main couple of the story, but this is her father, and he's leader of the Free Creatures. And in this scene, he is standing on a balcony of the keep with Heloisa, who is a badass, wonderful lesbian kind of Xena-like character. Mm-hmm. And then we have Shrum, who is the court announcer. And he's about to say something very big in a kind of, and it, you know, it's funny, I was reading this, I just recorded this as an audiobook a couple of weeks ago, and the scene came out to me as very modern, because if you take democracy as the thing that the evil is trying to kill, it works in this scene equally well. Are you ready?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. Finally, Shrum, shorter than all of them, stood on a box to be seen by the restless crowd, cleared his voice, and started reading from a scroll. Denizens of the keep, free creatures of the Hercynian forest, a new time has come. The dog's son was the beginning of a new arc in our history. Aaron Hart, our king and head of the free state, has an announcement. Aaron Hart bellowed out, "A grand portal has been found." He surveyed the crowd below with his eagle eyes as they exploded in commentary. "Silence, there is more. Heloisa," Brigham called out. "What's going on, Aaron Hart? We never see you anymore. Now you come out and stand on the balcony telling us there's a new portal?" Heloisa said under her breath, "Impertinent bugger," and stepped forward, reaching for her sword. Aaron Hart put a restraining wing in front of her and shook his head. He moved as room would allow to address Brigham. His voice was deep and carried authority. "You are right to ask. In a vacuum, information gets twisted. I owe you, all of you, the state of things as your leader. Since Frederick and my son were murdered by Wolf Raven, I have been reclusive and sorrowful. As a result, the Wolf Raven and his followers have become emboldened, and we all see the results. My daughter from the United States was actually taken captive by them, only released by the heroic efforts of Heloisa and her troops." There was a cheer, but it was muted. The heckler continued, "That was Heloisa. She..." Brigham was silenced by those around him. "Shut up, Brig. Listen." Aaron shook his eagle's head, holding in his temper, and then continued. "In California, a state in the other world they call America, the last dog son occurred a short while ago. We did not defeat the evil and root it out, but we kept it from getting worse. Even so, we are not truly free. Our lands have been shrinking as we are hunted by Wolfram's warrior monks. We hide behind our moat of illusion, and all of you have finally gathered here. Our world has become small. You could have heard a pin drop. Earnhardt took off the sling and spread his broken wing for all to see. Some gasped. This is not the way we were meant to live, broken, cornered. Food supplies are low. The protection around the castle is weak in some areas, and we are in greater danger now than ever before. It is time I joined the battle. The time of mourning is over. Leader Earnhardt, everyone knows you're not the same as when the war brought down Frederick and you were maimed by our enemy. How can you fight, if I may be so bold as to ask? There was a murmur and some gasps of outrage. He was still a beloved leader. Aaron's voice had a new growl to it. I underwent surgery today because I could not transform to a creature of the other world, a human man without it. Yes, I will heal and I will fight. We, the free creatures of the Hercynian forest, not only the garden, are not on the defensive anymore. We are at war with Wolfram and his cult. It is declared. Horns blared. There were probably 500 below in the courtyard, male, female, non-binary, human, dwarf, elf, and animal, and their collective intake of breath was palpable. We can't. What? How? We must. There is no other way. Our existence here and the balance of dark and light depends upon it. While I'm gone, you will need to be courageous and pull together. No more infighting. We need this rally to renew our commitment to a free magical world, a world where you can move beyond the walls of the keep. Brigham and Merle, I'm talking to you. The rabble below sounded angry. Who's going to protect us? Heloisa stepped forward. You are going to protect you. Heloisa's muscled arms were spread as she leaned over the balcony as if positioned to jump down and throttle them. Do you want to be slave or free? Free, came the almost unanimous roar of the crowd. She shouted, do you remember how good it felt to bring Aaron's daughter back to the keep? We have plenty of weapons. It's time to throw off our mourning, our hiding, and defeat our enemy. With that, she drew her heavy sword, waving it above her head, to Hercynia.
Thank you. Love that. That was so rousing at the end.
I love Heloisa.
I want to meet her. She sounds fierce. And what a great, yeah, what a great meeting that it's like, you know, you're setting up the entire thing, this big, you know, war to come, and the battle between good and evil, and it's so exciting. And I've read your book, so I know that they're wonderful, really exciting. Some flashes of humor in there throughout, and some great characters in there leading the good fight. Thank you, Reba. That was great.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Now, I know that those watching would love to know a bit more about both of you. So I have some questions for you today. And I know that they are as waiting as I am with bated breath to find out what you have to say. So let me start with you, Reba. Since this book is part of a series, what's your process for deciding where to go with these characters?
Okay, I'll sound like a crazy person now, but there are many characters in my book. There are people that live in Maryville. There are people that are in the Hercynian forest in Germany. And the more time I spend with them, I swear they're busy when I'm not writing and talking to each other. They seem to be determining their own fate. And I write in arcs. So the first 3 books are kind of a finished arc on one set of challenges they face and eventually overcome. And then I'm already working on book 4, which hopefully will be out later this year. That one's called Circle of Stones, and that starts a new arc, a new enemy, and it's lots of fun. And you're right, there is humor in there.
That's right. So tell me, how much do you rely on readers' knowledge of the previous books from the series, and to what extent do you recap or refer to past events in this book?
I've been very lucky. I have people that are waiting for the next one and have already read the first 3, or they've listened to the audiobooks. And I also have people that start at a different place. Maybe they start with the second book, Words on a Plate. And I hopefully have put enough in there about the first book that it can be a standalone. The thread that keeps them all cohesive are the main characters, and that would be Panda and Mitzi Fowler, my married couple. And I love them because they are us. They are normal, ordinary lesbians, and they're just living in this suburb of Los Angeles and like their little lives, and they just get drawn into all this stuff. And you get to watch them grow in each book and react to the external conflict.
Well, that's definitely realistic in an unrealistic way.
Right. Perfect. Love it.
So tell me, you mentioned that you had just finished recording the audio book for The Wolf You Feed. Do you know when that's going to be released?
Right now it is going through post-production, and they're pretty quick. So I would imagine within 60 days, it'll be up on Audible and iTunes.
Oh, excellent. So you'll get your readers ready for book 4 when it comes out later on in the year.
Book 4 is actually already written and making the rounds of editing. So I'm very excited.
Me too, because I get to read it next. Okay, let's go on to Laury. Your book has a strong psychological component. How did you get inside the mind of these characters?
Well, I was very interested in psychology during university and after, so that was has always been one of my favorite areas. But Patricia Highsmith was my first inspiration way back when I started writing. I loved her sort of sociopathic characters and the darkness that she wrote from. So this book is really very much sort of like her style, in the sense of a character you think is going to be one thing and then maybe not, is something completely different. So as I said, the double crossing is very important throughout this book. And then I was thinking, well, okay, lesbians fall in love like crazy right away, and then they want to move in together. And I thought, well, you always think such positive things at the beginning of a relationship, and you're completely blind to almost anything else, unless it's really, really obvious. So that was sort of my what if premise here at the beginning of writing this book. What if somebody just looked perfect to you and you wanted to live together? What would happen? So between the Highsmith sort of mode and that question, this book came about.
That's an interesting point, because at the beginning of a relationship, that's very true. You usually push aside any misgivings you have, ignore the habits you don't like, all of that. You just look at all the positives, all the good attributes and stuff like that. And it's later on, as you settle into the relationship, that things start to really pop up and you pay more attention to it. So yeah, and that you're right, that your title is a great giveaway that even though everything's great at the beginning, you should be watching out, because there are little things that are happening here that maybe should slow them down a bit, or slow down Alex at least.
Right.
And as a follow-up, did these characters surprise you at all as you wrote the layers which made up these complex characters?
They did, in a way. And I rewrote this book many times, and it started way back. I wrote the original manuscript, and then I severely changed it, including particularly at the ending. I usually am an organic writer, in the sense that I tend to get an idea. Occasionally I know where the goalpost is going to be, but I don't always know how I'm going to get there or how my characters are going to develop. I like to treat my characters like new people I've just met, friends, and then see how they behave and shoot off one another. Whether, what's true for their particular personality or their psychology. And just to see, how they'll behave. So that does involve some rewriting, particularly in dialogue, but also behavioral changes. So I tend to really let them come out and do their thing, and then I go back and try to make sure I'm being consistent.
Oh, that's interesting. So you don't, or do you write a character outline at all and then revise, or do you just go with the story and see what happens?
I go with the story pretty much. As I say, sometimes a character will come to me almost like a channeling effect, which is not the case here, but that's happened. But this was a what if kind of situation where I had a premise and then I sort of knew. Plus, it's always fun to sort of dredge back in your past and find some characters that,
Absolutely.
we might borrow a little from this person or that person.
I've heard from other authors that, anyone who was horrible to you in your life ends up being killed in a future book. So, hey, Reba, while I'm asking Laury about her writing process, do you write character outlines? And do you have a book, like a Bible of all your characters so you can keep track of them?
As they reveal more information, I write it down. And they don't have passports yet, but I feel like I'm getting to know them all pretty well. So much like Laury was saying, when somebody says something that isn't within their character, and that really helps with the writing.
Great. And Reba, you had a question come in. You mentioned story arcs and stated that the coming book 4 is the start of arc 2. Do you know how many arcs we have to look forward to reading?
Well, how long am I going to live? I still love these characters, and I love the stories. And I think unless we resolve the balance of good and evil in our universe within our lifetime, I've got plenty to write about. So I'm going to write until my pen runs out of ink, I guess.
Right. Or your computer keyboard, falls apart. Hey, Laury, we also had a comment for you that Trudy says she's going to check out your books. She likes psychological thrillers.
Yes, thank you, Trudy. Wonderful.
So this question is for both of you. How has the writing process, taking the manuscript from submission to publication, changed for you from the first book you had published to your present project? What's changed for you, and what's changed for the process? Laury, you want to take a stab at that?
Well, other than a poetry title, which I had published in 2009, my first novel was in 2012. But I spent my career as a book designer at University Presses. So I've been in publishing all my life, pretty much on the other side of the desk. What I've really noticed is the fact that I need to do more editing even than I did at the beginning. I tend to do 25 to 45 rounds on a book. I'm just really fussy, and even so, there are mistakes. I'm not, unfortunately, I'm not infallible. The other thing I've really noticed to change over this span of time is that the presses have really increased the amount of work that the authors need to do for publicity and promotion. I certainly sympathize because they don't have a budget to spend much money, and they don't often have a dedicated publicist on staff. But this is really a tough one on us poor authors because we tend to not be the most outgoing bunch. And that is one thing I've really noticed, that there's been a total change, shifting more and more of the publicity and promotion to the authors. Royalties and contracts have also not been as favorable to authors in the last few years. It's getting tougher and tougher, but then it's tougher and tougher for presses to make any money. So this is the other side of it. But we're certainly, I say a good day is if I can, spend enough money to buy a half a lunch at McDonald's is like,
McDonald's is getting lunch. McDonald's is getting expensive nowadays. So I don't know about that.
I haven't been for a while, but yes.
And you're right. We have a lot of small printing presses now, whereas it used to be the big ones. And when you have the larger publishing houses, they do have the publicists, they have the money to do the promoting. The royalty amounts are actually the percentages are smaller, but because they have all that advertising behind it, they sell more books. So it kind of evens out when you think of it that way. But you're absolutely right. The promoting is needed by the authors. Publishing houses, they do what they can, but the authors have to do it too. And you know what? It's funny because that's actually true across different industries. I'm from, white collar industries, and Reba, you're an attorney, too. But it used to be that you didn't have to do your own promoting. The people came in through the name of your firm or the name of your company, and you didn't have to. You just dealt with once you received a case and went on. But nowadays, you have to do your own promoting just to get those files in, get those cases in. So it's changed also in the other industries when you look at it that way. Great insight, Laury. Thank you. Reba, why don't you tell me what you think or what you have experienced as far as changes from submission to publication of books and for the process itself and for you?
Well, for any budding author out there, just know you're going to go on a journey. And the first book, the writing of it, and then letting it go out and be read by others, it's just that crazy place authors find themselves with, what if nobody reads my book? Oh my God, what if somebody reads it and doesn't like it? Or then you have feedback and you have editors, which is an amazing, marvelous process. No book is really, I think, written by one person. It is, it's just influenced by other people's eyeballs on it and making you look at your own story in a new way. They don't take the place of your words, but they just help you be better. And I think that each book you write, you get better, and you get a little bit humble too, because you realize you don't know everything. Mm-hmm. And speaking of being an attorney, I was listening to Laury's reading, which I enjoyed very much. And I thought, oh, red flags, red flags. I wanted, I wanted to have her as a client and warn her. But that's good because it presented very real. So anyway, it's just a learning journey, and I'm sure I'll keep learning more, but I really enjoy it. And I'm very happy to be with Launch Point Press, I must say. I think the friendships you make in realizing that women are not your enemy, and they are can be collaborative and supportive is just a really wonderful part of this journey.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Reba. We do believe in that wholeheartedly. We want to support other sister writers. We want to help with the process. I can never understand when, an author or someone else in the industry tries to cut down someone else within it. I mean, don't we have enough challenges as it is? Why would you do that? We're all about the collaborations. That's why we're thrilled to be collaborating with Desert Palm Press. We hope to do so in the future with other presses. We really just want to help everyone, give them their ability to be seen by as many people as possible, share our resources, whatever we can do. And there's no place in our industry to be cutting down anyone else for whatever reason. We're all professionals, so let's act that way. So, and by the way, Reba, we love you. We're glad you're with us. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about themes and tropes. What kind of themes and tropes do you like to explore in your books? And if you can, give me an example from today's reading. Laury, go ahead.
Well, I would say, again, this is psychological suspense. It's in a pretty, defined genre, though I also write literary work and occasionally a romance or mystery, getting into that area. But I think, this is my sweet spot, where I started, and really, I just really love to crawl inside a person's mind. I don't care whether it's somebody that's virtuous or somebody that's awful, because I think both are equally as fascinating. In fact, sometimes the bad guys, so to speak, are even more fascinating. Mm-hmm. So I do that. I this book is on the noir side, I would definitely say, and I had a great deal of fun writing it. The house in the book that they buy is almost another character. It's almost like a cozy in the sense of, there's a huge amount of activity that happens in the house. And then at the end, there's a sailboat involved. So I got to, bring out maritime maps and figure out all the buoys and everything going around the coast of New Jersey. So that was fun. But this book was very difficult to write. It was more complicated than some.
Are you also a sailor, or did you used to sail boats? Or?
I used to sail. Yeah, I had just a small boat. Little class boat, but I took lessons for a number of years, and this is a bigger boat. I did only sail one of those once. And So it was a
Well,
little
being
scary.
from Massachusetts originally, I can tell you that I'm also someone who's been on many boats over the years and loved it. And the many different types of vessels that you can be in also is just fun. And
Yeah.
you know, the parts in your book that deal with that, the sailing on the ocean, all that, they were very realistic. I mean, you could tell that you had that knowledge and was able to utilize it within the storyline. So well done on that. And I also like your point about the villains sometimes being the more interesting characters in the books. That's so true. We all love a good villain, especially if there is some sort of arc, or if you can really empathize with them in some way, and then you hate yourself for empathizing with them, but you understand where they're coming from and why they're all messed up and why they're doing these things. So great point on that. Reba, tell us, what are some themes or tropes do you like to explore in your books, and which, if any, did you explore in your present book that you read today?
Okay, light, shade, dark, within the characters and within the overarching story. One of the funnest things, if that's a word, starting with the first book, is you have a grizzled detective who you start out not liking very much, as kind of sexist and misogynistic, maybe a little homophobic. And he really has, he really grows through the story, through the people that he meets. So in this book, and it wasn't the scene that I chose to read, you know, I explore evil in different contexts. And in this book, it focuses more on religion. And there's a Reverend Morey that sets up a tent camp in the middle of Maryville, and he's trying to purge all the gay out of the town and trying to clean up Maryville and bring it back to those good old 1950s values. And
Right.
So that's something that is very challenging for the LGBTQ community. And it's interesting because his character starts out absolutely hateful. You just want to, you know, go over there and do something. And by the end of the book, you're not sure maybe if he hasn't been led down a garden path himself. So I hope that there is some nuance in the characters themselves. Nobody is 100% bad or 100% good. So we try to avoid, you know, those sorts of stereotypes. But then the big good and evil, that's really up for the reader to decide. I had one interviewer tell me years ago, oh, well, it's the patriarchy. Clearly, patriarchy, that's what it is. And it's like, well, it can be, you know, but it can be any type of oppression. I think that the big words that I hope people take away from my books are be a free creature. Whatever that means to you, be a free creature.
Right. And allow others to be free too in what they do, what they say. Absolutely. Great job. Okay. I have a couple of personal questions, just kind of like a rapid question and answer part. Just little things to let your readers know a little bit more about you. So first thing I'll ask is, what are some of your favorite hobbies, if you have time for hobbies? So Laury, do you have any hobbies that you like to indulge in?
Well, I used to have a lot of them. Unfortunately, I've had a walking issue. I can walk, but I have a foot disability. So things like playing tennis, sailing, traveling, a lot of the things I really enjoy doing, I really can't do anymore. Photography being a big one. I was a fine arts photography buff, and I still teach, instructor, but other than doing some cover illustrations for some of my books, I'm not doing too much anymore because I can't walk around with a camera like I used to.
Right.
So I am a pretty boring kid. I am mostly a 7-day-a-week workaholic, and I tend to relax and watch Netflix or Amazon or something like that at night, and I read every evening. So I'm also a reviewer for the New York Journal of Books. So
Nice.
that I get a lot of nice, really interesting books. I've got an Edmund White coming up, which I just arrived, so his new book. So I do a little bit of that, but my work is much more sedentary than it used to be.
I understand.
Day is rather.
It's not boring. It's just different, right?
Just different.
Did you take the picture that you have on Double Crossed?
One of my students did, but I sent her out to do it. She lives south of me, and I said, I want a sailboat with the sail down
Mhm.
And so this was a time of year when there weren't that many sailboats. So I'm sure she was cursing me no end, but she got the shot. So
Yeah.
uh,
Well
thank
done.
you to her. And then, but I did the design
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
and basically the art direction. Yeah.
Hmm. Reba, what kind of hobbies do you indulge in, if any?
I have a few interests, and lately I've been obsessed with pickleball.
Hmm.
And I have to say, I'm reading Laury's book, The Ungodly Hour now, and I love the references to the camera work, and obviously there's a love of that. Um, it made me think about what do I put in my books that I like to do, and old movies. Watched Agatha Christie last night. Love to read. Um, there's not a lot of time between working full time and writing,
Right.
and family, friends, just fill it up with, oh, and cooking. That's another passion. I'm not very good at it, but it doesn't stop me. I keep trying. So
Well, that's important, though, right?
have over 100 cookbooks, and I'm working on them.
Oh my God.
Wow, listen to you go. All right. I'll have to have you cook for me sometime. Great. So I wanted to ask you both also, have you worked any unusual or interesting jobs currently or in the past? And what are they?
Well, I was a book designer for my career. And I worked at Princeton University Press and then for about 22 other publishers as a freelancer. I also was a photographer freelance for the Opera Company of Philadelphia, and I did a world premiere of Philip Glass's opera, The Voyage, at the Metropolitan Opera, and sold for his archives to him personally. So those are two, really interesting things. And, being in publishing all those years, I designed almost 1,000 books. It was really, it was just a great learning experience. And I learned a lot about editing too, because by osmosis, I was dealing with some of the best editors around. So
Sure.
it was very humbling, but back then it was sort of an apprentice system where you really had to go through the whole process and learn. So it's very different than people in publishing today, except for maybe still in the university press system.
Mm-hmm. You say that you basically have to start from the bottom and then go through and learn as you go. That's kind of like being an attorney, right, Reba? You start from the bottom and then work your way up. Not to steal your thunder here, but tell me tell me about your unusual or interesting jobs you've worked presently or in the past.
Well, before I was a lawyer, I was a parish secretary, which is kind of interesting. Worked in an old church in Laguna Beach, and it was really fun for an author's imagination because the storms would come, and occasionally our electric would go out, our ancient electric. And at one point, I had a flickering candle, and I was in the dark trying to get the safe open. And it just really tickled my muse being there.
Yeah.
And I also learned a lot about the other side of religion that happens between Sundays, and worked for a very quirky Scottish priest. And that's going to come out in a novel somewhere someday.
Excellent. Yeah, that's all life experiences are, is just fodder for our future books, right? So we have a couple minutes left. So I wanted to give you both one more chance to just tell us anything you want us to know about the book you read from today. So Laury, is there anything else you want us to know about that Double Crossed?
Well, I think, I think readers who are really interested in psychological intertwinings of people, because there's another character in this book that I haven't mentioned, and that character is probably the most nuanced of the bunch and with the most complicated motivations. And so all of these players bounce off of each other and are sort of contained within this unusual house whose layout I drew very carefully. So I remember, room to room halls and things like that. But this is very much in the Patricia Highsmith mode. And I think anybody who likes her work will probably enjoy this one. And also another author that, a straight author, Lisa Unger, whose work I've been reading a lot of. I think that there's a little similarity there. It's more on a more contemporary way.
Excellent. And Reba, any last words, anything else you want us to know about the project you read from today, the Wolf You Feed?
Again, the blue book, The Wolf You Feed. Yes, I would really invite everyone to get to know Mitzi and Panda Fowler. They are a lovely couple. They love each other. I am fascinated by what happens in They Lived Happily Ever After. So that's where their story kind of picks up, because we're not seeing them meet and we're not having the dating experiences and all of that. They just really love each other. And I think that comes through in every scene that they are together. And it's, I don't know, I'm fascinated by enduring love for same-sex women. And I love that they can not have a coming out story, not have a romance, and still be relevant and just participate in this very big, exciting, magical world.
Excellent. Well said. Well, I'm sorry to say we've run out of time. I'd like to thank Laury and Reba for spending time with us today. This is the first Desert Palm Press and Launch Point Press collaborative live stream for 2023, and we have many more scheduled. I hope you'll join us for the next one on Sunday, March 12th, when we have 5 talented authors reading from their works. Until then, I hope you'll visit desertpalmpress.com and my website, launchpointpress.com. Until then, have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.